title of my message that I want to share is Trapped in Transition. Trapped in Transition. So the word transition is more than familiar to all of us, right? In fact, the older you get, the more acquainted you are with it. We've all been through some kinds, if not all kinds of transitions, you name it, right? Maybe you've taken your PSLE, and you're onto your first major transition of life. All of you guys are staring at all our P6s, all our 12-year-olds, right? You're on your first major transition of becoming officially a teenager. So shout out to all of you guys who just gotten out your postings for your school, about to start school in 1 week's time. So maybe you've taken your O-levels, N-levels, A-levels, you're into your late teens, your early tweens, right? Maybe you're getting a diploma, a degree, you're entering into early adulthood, where you get to vote, you get to watch every movie in a theater, you get to go to everywhere and have access to everything, right? Because you're of legal age. Or maybe you're starting a new job, a new career, or you're getting into a new relationship, or you're getting married, right? We also go through difficult transitions as well, right? Like losing a loved one, a family member to an illness, an accident, to divorce, losing a job, having to change jobs, heartbreaks, breakups, diagnosis of a health condition, maybe. And very often, most of these transitions are not voluntary. Meaning to say, if we have a choice, we would probably not want to go through them. Or at least we would want it to happen at our time and on our watch, right? I cannot count the number of times where someone comes up to me and they say, Karis, I hope I am a kid again. Don't need to worry about anything else. All I need to do is just to eat, to play, and to sleep. Literally last weekend, a new friend was just gazing at our very cute baby Zach. and she was like, how I wish I am a baby. And I was looking at her, I was like, what? You are literally a kid. You are a baby. So people say, how I wish I am in my 20s. I wonder how many adults will say, how I wish I'm in my 20s. I'm studying, making friends, enjoying the life, rather than just work, and worrying if I am making enough money at my age, or hitting the milestones that I should be hitting by age 30 or 40 or 50, right? I mean, the list goes on. So not only are transitions challenging for all of us, nerve-wracking. Think about new environment, new friends. We sometimes feel stuck and trapped in transitions. Like we cannot move backwards because we are too old. And we kind of can't move forward for whatever reasons. We are supposed to be this cool, independent 19-year-old who should have grown a little better in handling our emotions, our disappointments, coming off poly, ITE, JC, right? But yet, we crumble under pressure like how our 16-year-old self would. We struggle like how our younger self would. Or we're supposed to be this, transited into becoming this responsible, capable, young working adult who should by now know what they're doing with their life, with their money, with their career, with their relationships. And yet, 5 years into adulthood, we still feel we haven't quite get it all together. It probably feels worse when we benchmark our lives against our parents or our friends who might have, quote unquote, achieved at our age, at the same age as us. So we feel trapped in this transition where we are supposedly 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 of age, but instead our hearts, our minds, our maturity are trapped 5 years backwards and struggling to catch up. Or we feel afraid, we're not ready to make that transition, right? We struggle to grow up. Instead of moving through the transition, we stubbornly stay put at where we are at. So it is like getting kicked out of your secondary 2 classroom because now you are secondary 3 and you have to go upstairs to go to your secondary 3 classroom. But then you refuse, so you pull up a desk outside your secondary 2 classroom, hoping that they will take you in. Right? So not only do we feel trapped, but transitions are also when we are the most vulnerable to danger. So do you know Boeing released a finding in 2019, right? They found out that both takeoff and landing are statistically the most dangerous parts of a flight. In fact, 63% of all fatal accidents happen during the initial takeoff and the final descent. So a wake-up call for everyone who sleeps through takeoff and landing. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm included, right? So when does accidents mostly happen? During transitions. We are the most vulnerable in transitions. People lose all sorts of things when getting off the plane. Lose their wallet, lose half the luggage. Checking out of a hotel, getting off the train. They also lose their temper and their patience, and they lose their mind. Because we are distracted, we are trying to figure out where's the next place that we're getting to. So our guts are down and we get lost and we lose things. And that's the reason why there are so many traffic marshals positioned at entrances or exits, right? Because these are places of transitions. So after having said so much about how challenging and dangerous transitions can be, I do want us to know that transitions in life are also beautiful and magical because you get this opportunity to transform. So we all know the life cycle of a butterfly, right? A very cute caterpillar hatches from the egg and then it quickly turns into a munching machine. And before we know it, it goes through a transition called the pupa stage, primary school science. So if you look at it, the cocoon on the outside looks like nothing is going on, right, during the pupa stage. But then on the inside, big changes are happening. And then after a while, poof, a completely different creature, a beautiful butterfly emerges from within and it starts to take flight. So I want to encourage us that we are meant to move through transitions and to transform like a caterpillar to a butterfly. Your better selves are always ahead of you. And maybe some of you are in the midst of a life transition, or you're about to enter into a new phase, a new chapter of life, or you feel trapped and stuck in your transition for many years, for a couple of years, essentially, especially so because of pandemic the last 3 years. I hope to encourage you in your journey of growth as a person today. And there are 3 things that I find particularly helpful when we are in transitions. And I hope this will help you to transit well in your life as much as it has does for me. All right? So the first thing that's helpful is to learn to let go. You can cue the let go song in your head. So transition begins with a string of losses. Loss of roles, your titles, loss of some relationships and friendships, loss of what's safe and comfortable, of what's predictable. So the pandemic in many ways, right, have escalated our loss, for good or for bad. Because under normal circumstances, we probably would have hold on to those things much longer. But because of pandemic, no choice, have to let it go. Maybe it could be a relationship that we need to move on for a long time. It could be a mindset that we rigidly hold on to. Could be a job that we hold on to even though we're not happy for a very, very long time. Some losses are not so difficult to move on. For example, there are friendships where you are still friends with a certain group, maybe childhood friends, maybe school friends, maybe old friends, but you have kind of outgrown the conversation you guys used to have, or have become very different people with very drastically different values. And life kinds of go on and, it just kinds of grow apart and you develop other closer circles of friends. But some losses are painful, right? And very scary. For example, like losing a job, coping with a divorce in your family, losing a loved one. You'll be thinking, how do I let go when I've grown so attached to a particular role, to a particular identity, to a person, to a way of life. Or going through major life transitions can be difficult. Going into adulthood, coping with work, and now added responsibilities and expectations where your identity is kind of changing, right? The thought of having to let go of who you are used to being and comfortable with, and you're not sure who you're becoming, is a very scary thought. And then you throw pandemic into the mix of all of this, it makes the transition very dramatic and very exaggerated. So I want to bring us to a story in the Bible of a group of people who is going through transition. And they are the Israelite people with Moses. So for some background, for some context, is that at this point of time, Moses' time, right? The Israelites were slaves in Egypt for over hundreds of years. And the people were really treated badly, and they cried out to God to rescue them. To which God hears them in Exodus 6:6, right? It says, I am the Lord, I will bring you out from Egyptian forced labor. I'll rescue you from your slavery. I'll set you free with great power. I'll take you as my people. I'll be your God. I will bring you into the land I promised to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I give it to you as your possession. I am the Lord. So God made a promise and gave his promise to the people, leading them to a promised land. So after many rounds with Pharaoh, right, back and forth, negotiating, bargaining to free the people, finally he said, okay. And Moses led the exodus, the thousands of Israelite people out of Egypt. He splits the Red Sea, which you are familiar with, and then the people crosses over officially into a transition. So if you notice, between Egypt and their promised land is the wilderness. Between Egypt is over here. The promised land is over there. This whole space here is the wilderness. Okay? The wilderness is a transition. So the Israelites are not meant to stay in the wilderness. They're meant to pass through this wilderness and get to their land. Do you know that it takes approximately 11 odd days to travel through the wilderness? Maybe less than that if you have Godspeed, okay? But the Israelites were trapped in this transition for a total of, you make a guess? 40 years. They're in this space for 40 years. So much so that many of the older generation actually died in the wilderness and never made the transition. So a major problem the people were facing, right, were struggling with is they couldn't let go of Egypt. They couldn't. They were worried about what's ahead of them. They were slaves for so many years that they just don't know how to live differently. It's pretty ridiculous because they have more than one time said to God and to their leader, they said, why didn't God just kill us back in Egypt than to bring us out here to suffer? Why did God make life so difficult for us? They complained against Moses, who kind of led them out, and said to one another that they should appoint a new leader to bring them back to Egypt. And what they're saying is that I would rather be a slave, be mistreated, be harshly dealt with. At least that's familiar, and that's what I know all my life. And aren't we the same sometimes, right? Before we readily say yes. We run back to what we are familiar with. Instead of rising up to the new challenge with a courageous heart, we go back to old friendships, old mindsets, old relationships, maybe toxic ones, searching for some comfort. We've gone back to our old ways of dealing with pressure and stress. And we do that because there's certainty, it is safe, it's predictable, and it's comfortable. And also, another reason is our ego has attachment issues. Our ego has attachment issues. Our ego loves to latch on to titles, to roles, to past achievements, to past failures even, our past identity, and we cannot move on. So I understand that we need comfort from time to time. And especially when we are struggling, we really crave a safe place. But the question is, and the difficult question is what you are clinging onto with your whole life, with all your heart, really all that good? And I want to encourage us that in transitions, we've got to let go of some things. Not everything, but some things. You have to let go of your old behaviors, your old mindsets, old ego, some old people, old relationships that are problematic, old attitudes, your old emo, your familiar deep dark hole, right? Our old selves. We have got to find that it's time to shelf them and put it aside. I think it's okay once in a while to take them out from the shelf for some comfort and to be in that space, to just maybe reminisce the past, I don't know. But it's got to be packed away and it's got to be shelved away. Because sometimes the enemy of better is not bad. The enemy of better is before. So do you know when the caterpillar is in a cocoon, right? It breaks down completely into fluid form. And the cells regrow to become a butterfly. The metamorphosis of a caterpillar is amazing in that it will have to surrender completely. The caterpillar has to surrender and dissolve to become nothing before it becomes something, before it evolves into a butterfly. So I want to encourage you, learn to let go and surrender your identity to make room for a better you. So for some of you, if you're going through loss of family, relationships, friendships, I am so sorry for you. That, it is okay to grieve. And coming from someone who has lost my dad when I was younger, that it sometimes takes a really long time to grieve. It's not just overnight, I'm going to be okay. It may take years, it may take months, it may take longer than that. And it's okay to be sad of what was and what could have been, right? But for some of us here, I want to say that you got to learn to let go of people in the form of forgiveness. Because you cannot move on holding on to grudges and judgments. You got to release forgiveness, kindness, and blessings so that you can move on. For other ones of you, if you are like the Israelites, you're complaining 24/7 in your transitions, complaining why life isn't as easy as before, why people not the same as before. It is time to let go of what's before. Like I've said, right, before is sometimes the enemy of better. So approach your transition in surrender and in humility because you will cope better that way. Better than complaining, better than being defensive, better than being an arrogant, know-it-all that no one can help you. All right? So that's the first thing, to let go. Second thing is we've got to identify our emotions. Identify your emotions. Okay? So when we go through transitions, we feel a flurry of emotions going on. We become what we call a bit sensitive. ABS, right? A bit sensitive. But I would say a lot sensitive actually. We feel a whole lot more. We can become irrationally self-conscious. For example, maybe you're going to buy your lunch and then you say, the Korean food store auntie never smile at me. Is it because she hates me? And then everybody hates me, nobody loves me. And if we are not aware, right, we can go into an emotional spiral. We link one thing to another, and then we end up at the wrong place with the wrong conclusion. We dig a hole and we literally bury ourselves inside. We can end up hurting ourselves more, and equally problematic is we hurt other people. We can let emotions cripple us and ultimately break us. So let me say this, that emotions are not bad, right? Even the ones that we deem as not so great. For example, anger, very intense, envy, insecurity, doesn't feel that great. But they're not bad because our emotions point us to our needs. Something is lacking, right? That's why we are reacting this way. Or it points us to issues that we need to work through with others, or areas that we need to work on ourselves, or areas that we need to mature. To effectively deal with our emotions, we have to start with accurately identifying and naming them. So a research done by Brené Brown, who is a research professor who has spent 2 decades researching about courage and vulnerability. Oh, sorry. Reveals that we can experience up to 87 different emotions. So I put up an emotion wheel for us. So, for example, there's so many feelings, right? Fearful, rejected, anxious. I know it's kind of tiny, you can't see it. Angry, humiliated, bitter, sad, hurt, guilty, and so on. However, so that's it, right? So many emotions, right? However, most people have limited to non-existent vocabulary for what they're feeling. For example, everything is I am okay or I'm not okay. Or another one, I'm all right or I'm not all right. Or everything is just I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm happy or I'm neutral. So naming your emotion helps you to examine and understand yourself better. It also helps you to answer this question, right? What is really, really going on? For example, are you really discouraged or are you just embarrassed? Are you really discouraged or you're just envious, right? Or both? Are you really concerned or are you just curious? Some people, they ask, are you okay? I'm so concerned about you. But no, really, maybe they are just because they're curious and they are a busybody. Are you really concerned or are you just a busybody, right? How intense are your emotions? Is it just a passing one or is it here to stay for a while? Are you really happy or are you delusional? I'm kidding. So we have to take a step back to be by ourselves, to be honest with our emotions and where they might be coming from. And why you should do that is because that is how you build maturity and resilience. And you get through your transition better that way. I'm not saying it's easy, but you get it through better. Most importantly is that when you've taken a step back to identify what you're feeling, right, you expand your choices on what to do about it. I find that some of us, when a flood of emotions come rushing in, we short circuit immediately. Either we shut down completely, we suppress all our feelings, and we distract ourselves because we're avoiding the discomfort and pain. Or, on the other hand, we lash out on other people hurtfully. We hurt ourselves, we hurt other people, we get angry, we blame, we complain, we make sure we bring the whole group down because I'm sad and I'm angry. Or we do both together. So take a step back first, understand what's going on in your own heart, so that you're able to respond instead of react. You're able to grow instead of lashing out on others. You're able to help, not hurt. You're able to act in a way that aligns with values rather than align with feelings. You're able to respond in a way that takes you one step of becoming who you are, a better you. So I find that maturity is being able to recognize a feeling and not having to act on it. A mature person is able to recognize I have some feelings going on here, but I don't have to act on that feeling. So if you're hurting, you're discouraged, you're sad, you're overwhelmed, you're ashamed, don't be quick to start ranting away, complaining away to the whole wide world on Instagram. You gotta lock the door by yourselves, go into a room, check with your heart, and be honest with yourself. And I really do want to encourage us that transitions are not the easiest. So give yourself time, be patient, be kind with yourself. Take your time. But at the same time, don't take too long. Don't run away for a long time. Shut down because it's painful, it's difficult. I love what Virgil Abloh, our designer and founder of Off-White, right? He says, the thing that I would tell a younger version of myself, that the struggle is the point. That the struggle is the point. That your struggle is your opportunity to grow, to mature, and to transition. Do you know that every seed, right, that you plant in the ground, it has to have a crack in order for it to grow, in order for the shoot to come out and to grow. So your struggle is not terrible. Your flood of emotion is not bad. Let those things help you to examine where you are at and help you mature and to help you grow. Okay? So third thing is be grounded. Be grounded. I find that in times of transition, right, there can be so many changes and just a lot of instability and a lot of insecurity. And what's really helpful, I find, is groundedness. That feeling of stability, that feeling of steadfastness, at ease, that hopeful feeling in the midst of changes, in the midst of chaos, where you are not caving in to pressure, you're not finding yourself going wherever the wind is going. You're not finding yourself where your values changes like the clothes that you wear. Today I believe in this, tomorrow is another story. Groundedness helps us to center ourselves, to focus on doing what's important, what is true, and what's good. So I found out that the duration of the cocoon stage, right, varies depending on the species. So for most of them, it's a couple of weeks where they kind of go through this transition. Some of them is a month. However, some species, very shockingly, can have a pupal stage of 2 years. Part of the reason is the pupa is waiting for the appropriate season and climate to evolve. So I want to encourage you that your transition is different from someone else's transition, that your journey is different. So don't let your insecurities and your fear lead you. Find your grounding, your stable feeling, and keep focused on doing what's good and what's important for you, even if that means waiting for 2 years. Okay, so how can I ground myself better? Answer is lock yourself up at home. Yeah, that's how you can ground yourself. Lock yourself up. Okay, I'm kidding. So one of it is to have a good support system and good mentors. Because I find that mentors, people who are ahead of us, older than us, maybe, they are stable. And oftentimes, they are very objective and perceptive. One thing I'm really grateful for and is a privilege to have is my mentors, my leaders, right? As well as some of the friends who are ahead of me in life and ahead of me in convictions. They bring stability and anchor into my life. I think a lot of people, they look for comfort in transitions. They want to be patted on the back. They want to be patted on the head, basically patted everywhere. Like, oh, you, look at you, so sad. I understand you. I feel you, bro. I'm with you, right? And nothing wrong with that, right? We all need encouragements. We all need someone to be with us. We all do. But equally important as comfort is we need stability. Do you know that to keep a ship stable in waters, right, there are two primary forces acting on the ship. There's the gravity that's acting down, and then there is the buoyancy that's the force acting up. So gravity is the force pulling the vessel down in the water. Essentially, it's the force that's sinking the ship. Buoyancy is the force that's pushing the vessel up. It's the force that makes the ship float. So gravity is like our struggle, right? Our burdens, our pressure, pulling us down in the water. But to have stability, you got to have buoyancy, which is like our mentors, our leaders, truths, objectivity that pushes us back up in the other direction. Maybe things that we don't like to hear, maybe things that are different from what we are feeling at the moment, and that's why it's an opposing force, right? It pushes us on the other way. So we all need truths that push us up. We need stability and objectivity to move forward in life. In fact, I find this so interesting. Let me pull this picture up for you, right? That when your ship is traveling in moving waters, it is never completely stable. Agree? Right? The waves is kind of hitting onto your boat and all that. However, your ship has a negative stability, right? Meaning your ship will capsize. Positive stability means, it can still survive, it can still go on. But negative stability means it's going to capsize. If the center of gravity shifts further outward than the center of buoyancy. I'll give you a moment, all right? So you can see that the center of gravity is further out than the center of buoyancy. Well, that center of buoyancy is further out than your center of gravity, right? So, to put it simply, buoyancy must always be greater than your gravity to stay afloat. And that says a lot, right? That we need a greater objectivity, a greater anchor, a greater truths and values to ground us so as to have a greater buoyancy to stay afloat in life. So how else can I ground myself, you may ask? Well, we have God with us. So bringing us back to the story of the Israelites, right? In Exodus chapter 13, verse 21, says, God went ahead of them, the people, in a pillar of cloud during the day to guide them on the way, and at night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel both the day and the night. The pillar of cloud by day, every day, and the pillar of fire by night, every night, never left the people. So the amazing thing is that God was always ahead of the people. For 40 years, He has always led them in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. Every single day He is there. In fact, really amazing is that God planned the route, right, of their transition in such a way to prepare them for the promised land. Because if you look at the map, God said that if the people were to just travel directly across the way to the land of the Philistines, that's the shortest way across, right? One straight line. It's the shortest, but they will have to face war with the Philistines. And God knew that they are not ready to fight. They will lose heart and they will be discouraged. So He needs time to encourage and to prepare them to take their promised land. So God is always that consistent and that steadfast anchor that we need. Sometimes I wonder, or maybe we wonder, right? Why is it that the Israelites are complaining so badly actually? Why? Because, in Nehemiah, right? You will know the amount of things that God has done. The pillar of cloud didn't leave them daily. It continued to show them their route. The pillar of fire did the same, showed them the right way to go. And the pillar of cloud is like a little umbrella, from the hot sun. That pillar of fire is like a warmth in the night, right? And it says, you gave them your good spirit to teach them to live wisely. You were never miserly with your manna. Gave them plenty of water to drink. You supported them 40 years in the desert. They had everything they needed. Their clothes didn't wear out and their feet never blistered. Oh my goodness. That in itself is such a miracle, isn't it? That your clothes and your shoes never wore out for 40 years. Wow. We need this brand. So, they have everything they need. You see, I find that God always sees us. And God is always ready to lead us. But I guess what's important is that if we can see that, then that is all the difference it makes. When we see that God has been here all along and that He's been doing, what's best for us all along, that He's here supporting us all along. So I want to encourage you that God is with you. That He is like the pillar of fire, He's like the pillar of cloud. He is your steadfast anchor, your truth that you can turn to. And I want to encourage all of you guys that may you transform into a beautiful butterfly that God's intending you to.